Hey guys, welcome to our service. Thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't know, Church on the Move has 3 locations across Northeast Oklahoma. We would love to meet you, so if you're close to one of those locations, come join us in person. We have incredible worship, teaching, and amazing kid and student environments, and I'd love for your family to experience that in person. If you have any questions, visit churchonthemove.com for more information or drop a comment below. Now, here's the service.
Well, good day. How we doing? Good. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. I've been just taking some time just to think about the journey we've been on over the past couple of years and to think where we were a couple of years ago, and many of us were in a much different place. Asking God to move, and we were all in a place of desperation and needing God to work on our behalf, and then to kind of look now and see what God has done. I'm humbled and I'm grateful to see how God's shown up, and I'm really proud of how the Spirit of God has worked in this place and how He's continued to just form a healthy church. I was talking with a pastor a couple of weeks ago, and he says, man, what's the biggest win that you've experienced over the last couple of years? And I said, man, I think it's just that our church is healthy and we like each other. That's a pretty big deal in the church today, because you talk to some pastors and it's like, man, we don't like each other very much. Everybody's fighting and at each other. And I said, I think our church loves each other and we're a family and we get along. And I talk to pastors and they want to be somewhere else. They don't like their church. They're looking for other places to be. And I'm really humbled and really grateful to be where I am, doing what I'm doing. And I thank God for the privilege to get to pastor here. And I'm really proud, and I hope that you're proud of our church. I hope you're proud of what God is doing here, and humbled that we get to be a part of something really spectacular. And I'm really privileged and grateful for the honor to be a part of Church on the Move West. And I'm thrilled about our future. As I look ahead and I see where we're going and what God is doing, I'm really thrilled about the possibilities of what tomorrow holds. So we want to dig in. We're starting a new series today called Missio Dei. I don't know if that's a phrase you're familiar with. I don't know if it's a phrase that you've contemplated much. But Missio Dei is Latin for, and it stands for the mission of God. The mission of God. What does that mean to you? Is this something you've asked yourself? What is the mission of God? There's a lot of people that talk about that. There's a lot of people that define that. Some theologians that will talk about that. There's some academics that will try to pinpoint that. There's some people that are very passionate about a cause that will tell you their cause is the mission of God. And in our tendency to want to define something and summarize something, we want to make something really simple. We want to make it understandable. And in these debates and in these conversations, there can sometimes be arguments. And, the mission of God is this. That's got to be this one thing. The mission of God is this, and it's got to be this one thing, and it's got to include this and only this. No, it's got to be this, and it's got to include this. And I think as I look and try to understand and wrap my mind around the mission of God, I don't know that it's one particular thing. The Bible says that God thinks a little bit differently than we think. God's way of thinking is higher than our thinking. He's got a little bit more capacity. He's a little bit smarter than we are. He has a tendency and an ability to have a little bit more complex thought. He's got the ability to hold a few more variables than we have the ability to hold in our mind. So when we come to this idea of what is the mission of God, what is God's mission? What is God's purpose? I don't know that we can nail it down to just one individual thing, one individual cause, one isolated thing. I think it's pretty complex. I think it's multiple things, multiple layers, multiple dimensions. But I think as we pull out and we begin to zoom out, there's maybe a thought that in a big picture way we could encapsulate, we could summarize in a simplistic way that we could see maybe what God is up to. We see it here in Genesis chapter 1. We see glimpses of it throughout the totality of Scripture and the story of Scripture. We saw it in the end of Scripture when we dove into Revelation a few weeks ago. In Revelation 21, verse 5, God said this. He got John's attention and he said, "Look, I am making everything new." And I think maybe if we were to try to sum up the mission of God, I don't know that we could pinpoint just one aspect of what he's doing, but I think maybe in a zoomed out big picture perspective, we could maybe say the mission of God is somewhere around that, to make things new. That he takes things that are broken, he takes things that are discounted, he takes things that seem to have no purpose, and he makes them new. We see it here in the beginning of Genesis 1, where he takes something that's shapeless and void and lifeless, and he makes something new and useful out of it. He brings life out of it. He does that with you and me. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17, he says, I'm taking you in your life, and just when you think you're useless and you have no purpose, and your sin and your brokenness and your past has disqualified you from being useful, I can take you, and when you surrender your life to me and you give me your brokenness and you come to me and have a relationship with me and trust in me and believe in me, man, I can do away with all of your brokenness, and I can make you brand new. I think maybe there's something to that. I don't know that we can totally understand the complexity and the totality of the mission of God, but I think it's important that we understand God has a mission. That God's not random in what he does. God doesn't just, roll the dice. God doesn't just randomly say, I feel like this today. Let's see what I feel like today. No, God is very intentional with everything that he does. So think about where you were born and at what time you were born and to whom you were born. It's not accidental. We see that throughout Scripture, that he looks at people and he says, I knew you when you were in your mother's womb. And I was intentional with when and where I placed you. And I've brought you into the world. He looked at Esther and he said, for such a time as this, I have intentionally placed you. I'm very purposeful in when and where I've placed you. And I've put significance and purpose on the inside of you. You are a part of my mission. And God has a mission. And because God has a mission, I think the second thing that we need to understand is that God's church has a mission, has a purpose, and should be intentional in how we live and how we function and how we move. And because the church has a function, you and I, and because we're in relationship with God, we have a mission. We're to be intentional and purposeful. There ought to be something about our relationship with God and our relationship with the Spirit of God that causes us to be intentional and purposeful. To not be random, but to depend on God and to allow God to lead us and instruct us and to fall into, I want to be a part of God's mission and God's purpose. And so we begin to see that, we begin to understand that, and we begin to look here in Genesis chapter 1, and we begin to see God creating and God moving on something. He's making something new, and we see him creating life, light, day, land, water, space, time, all of these things. And then we come to verse 26, and it begins to create something that's a little bit different. In verse 26, then God said, let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, the small animals that scurry along the ground. So God created human beings. He created them in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And then God blessed them. And he said, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. Some translations use the word subdue. It's a powerful word, subdue it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. And here I think we have a glimpse at the Missio Dei, this idea that God has created humanity in his image, and given us this responsibility of partnership in the mission of God. But I want to draw your attention, before we get into the mission of God, to the word blessed. The word blessed is a powerful word. Notice he blesses them before he gives them mission and purpose. The word blessed is not just a pat on the back of, man, you're cool. No, that word blessed means that he blessed them. He gave them the capacity and the ability to actually accomplish the mission before he gave them the mission. Now that's important to understand, because anytime God gives us a mission, how many of you know we often feel inadequate and incapable of accomplishing the mission? You can take a lot of stops along through Scripture and see that when God steps up into somebody's life and gives them mission, they say, thanks, but no thanks. Let's think about Moses. Hey, Moses, I've got a mission for you. I've got some people that need some help and need some freedom and need some deliverance. And I need you to go talk to Pharaoh and say, hey, let God's people go. Thanks, but no thanks, because I'm incapable. Hey, Gideon, you are a mighty man of valor. God, you got the wrong guy. I am the least of the least. I'm a coward. I'm a failure. My family's a failure. The tribe that my family belongs to is a failure. You got the wrong guy. I am incapable of doing what you've asked me to do. And many times when God gives us mission, our first response is, I can't, and I'm incapable. But it's important for us to know that from the get-go, before God gives us mission, he blesses us, which means he gives us the capacity and the ability to accomplish the mission before he gives us the mission. Which means even when we don't feel it, and even when we don't know it, we have the capability. So Gideon, Moses, all of the other people that had been given mission, even though they didn't feel it, it was there. It existed on the inside of them. And so we've been blessed, we've been called, we've been prepared, we've been given ability and capability, and it exists on the inside of us even before God has spoken to us and given us the charge and the call. So now, knowing that we've been blessed even though we don't feel blessed, knowing that we're capable even though we don't feel capable, now we can step in faith towards the mission, trusting that God, if you've called me, you've blessed me. God, if you have charged me, you've prepared me. God, if you have asked me to do this, you've only asked me to do this because you've made me capable of doing this. Because God, you're not going to ask me to do something that you haven't prepared me to do. Right? So he blesses them and gives them capacity and capability before he gives them the mission. And then he gives them the mission. 3 things: multiply, expand, and subdue. And that mission hasn't changed. We see it again in Matthew 28. Go and make more disciples. Multiply, expand, subdue. We see it again in Acts chapter 1 where he speaks to his disciples. Go and wait and be filled with the Holy Spirit so that you can be given power to be my witnesses and do what? Multiply, expand, subdue. It's a common theme throughout Scripture, and where you see God's people gathering in community, you see this mission being accomplished of multiply, expand, subdue. The first one is multiply. God says, listen, I want you who've been created in my image to make more people, make more humans. My wife and I had the mission of being a very biblical family when we were first married. We took Scripture very seriously. And God wasn't just interested in more humans. His interest was in family and in community that reflected his image. Notice he didn't just make another creation. He said, no, I'm gonna make this creation different. I'm gonna make this creation, this human, in our image. God existed in relationship, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There was community, there was relationship, there was love, there was peace, there was togetherness, there was wholeness, there was perfect union. And they said, let us make humanity in our image. And so he made humanity. And then he said, hey, this man is not good that you're alone. And he brings woman out of man, and there's this relationship. And he says, I want you to be fruitful. I want you to multiply. I want you to make more, not just people. I want you to make more people that carry my image, that carry my reflection, which means I want more people that look like me, that act like me, that talk like me, that reflect my character. I want to fill the earth with people that do relationship like I do relationship, that behave like me. I want to fill the earth with my character, with my goodness, and I want you to reflect who I am. And so there's a mission for us today as the church to carry this multiplication mission that we are to make more. The way we would say it today is to make more disciples. The way Jesus said it in Matthew 28, go and make more disciples, make more Jesus followers, make more people who look like God, who act like God, who carry the character of God, who behave like God, who do relationship like God, who do leadership like God, who carry the kingdom of God on the inside of them, who walk through this life displaying the characteristics of the kingdom of God in their behavior, in the way that they talk, and in the way that they act. But it's more than just bringing people. It has components of evangelism, of going and reaching people who are far from God, who it's going and having conversations and displaying and being relational and introducing people to Jesus that may not know Jesus. But it's more than just bringing people to a place of what we would call in the church conversion, and bringing people to a place of having a prayer or having an encounter with God. And that's incredible and that's awesome. But how many of you know when you have a baby out of a healthy marriage and out of a healthy relationship, and you produce life and you have a baby, you don't leave them at the hospital. They like for you to take the child home with you, right? And how many of you know that child needs to be fed and clothed, and that child screams in the night and awakens you from your peaceful slumber and produces dirty diapers and needs to be cared for so that there's this process of discipleship that goes into nurturing and developing that child into, it doesn't just come from a moment of transition where a person, it's now a development process of growing. And as a church, it's not just about creating an environment where people can be introduced to a real Jesus. It's about helping them on a journey towards becoming formed into the image and the likeness in their relationship to look more and act more like Jesus. We have to create an environment to where people are not only introduced to Jesus, but they are moved towards and moving towards Jesus so that they can look more like him. This morning, I was having breakfast with some people. Kim and I were with Kendall and Kai, and they have a not a newborn, but an 8-month-old, and pretty cool little dude. And I was being a good pastor, and I was holding little dude, and so mom could have breakfast and eat, and we're bouncing around. And it's been a minute since I've had one that young, and I forgot what they were capable of. And I thought at that age they could hold themselves up. And so I set him down, and I forgot that they were top heavy. And little man fell over on his face. And, things happen like that, but they're strong. They're okay. He cried. We got him back up. We dusted him off. Things happen. He got him back with mom. He's good. He's got a scar. It's no problem. He'll story to tell when he's in counseling one day. But there's this process of nurturing and developing and growing. And that's what the church is about. It's not just a movement of conversion. It's a movement of discipleship and helping people move towards Jesus. But here's the thing. You reproduce what you are. And so it's important for you and I to be people who actually carry the image of God. If we're going to be a church that reproduces the image of God in others. In the beginning, God created someone, and he created them in his image, and they reproduced who they were. And so the thing that we do as a church and the thing that we're intending, and if we're doing our job, the things that we do and the groups that we have and the stuff and the rooted and the mid-size and the things and the Bible studies are not religious activities so that you can feel good about the religious stuff you do. They're all intentional about moving you towards Jesus. It's not just information to fill your head with interesting facts and information about the Bible. It's all intended to shape you and to form you and to help you look and sound and act and be shaped into the image of God so that you carry his character on the inside. But it's not just enough for you to be involved in the life of the church from being shaped into the image of God. The Bible says that we should become not just discipled, but we should become disciple makers. And that as you become people who get involved in the life of the church, you're not just consumers, but you're contributors, and now you're helping shape others. And as you get involved in the serving and the stuff that's going on, now you're contributing to helping others become more like Jesus. We reproduce who we are. We are being discipled, and we're helping disciple others. We are becoming a church that's multiplying, making more disciples. That is part of the mission of God. The second thing that God tells them is not just multiply, but expand. As you are fruitful and multiply, I want you to fill the earth. I want you to expand. The garden that they were in was just a small piece of the earth. It didn't take up the entirety of the earth. You say, how do you know that? Well, when they made a mistake, they got kicked out of the garden. And God said, I want you to take the goodness that I've created here, and I want you to fill the earth. I want you to expand what I've done for you. And as you fill the earth, I want you to cultivate and expand what I've done. What I've done for you should spread out and affect the rest of the earth around you. What God's doing here for us, in us, should be done through us to affect the community around us. It should be expanding out and in to the community. As you go out, it should be expanding out and in to the world around us. We should be taking and developing new ground, taking risks, and expanding what God is doing in us. And it should be affecting what's around us. Adam and Eve were giving the charge to expand the garden, expand what was good, expand the life that they were experiencing. God didn't want them to just sit in a place of comfort and just experience all of God's goodness for themselves. He said, no, I want you to expand it. And I'm reminded of what he told Abraham. He said, I have blessed you, not so that you can just live in a place of blessing. I have blessed you so that you can expand and be a blessing to other people. It's God's intention that he bless us so that we can be a blessing to others. And he said, I want you to expand and I want you to take and develop new ground. One of my favorite quotes that I heard many years ago, I can't even remember who said it or where it came from. I wish I could give them credit. But one of my favorite quotes of all time is that healthy things grow and growing things change. Healthy things grow and growing things change. Just sticking with our analogy of a newborn. Think about a child that's born. If they're healthy, if they're fed, if they're nurtured, guess what happens? Naturally, they grow. And guess what happens as they grow? They change. They can't wear the same clothes at 6 months that they could as they were a newborn. They can't wear the same clothes at 2 years that they could at 6 months. They can't wear the same clothes at 10 years old that they could at 5 years old. There's changes that are happening as they grow. What is healthy naturally grows. And what grows naturally experiences changes. Now, just in our human genetics, growth has its limitations. Growth doesn't happen to infinity. It has its limitations. But you get the idea that what is healthy will grow and what grows will experience changes. We have some odd feelings and emotion as it relates to growth. Because in the church and in the church world, there's been a lot of people that have approached the idea of growth in a really unhealthy way. There's a couple of extremes as it relates to that. There's some people that have been afraid of growth and have avoided growth. I've had some odd conversations with pastors that think it's immoral to grow, that have avoided growth and have intentionally think that the church should stay small and little. And the smaller the church, the better the church and the more healthy the church. And I've met other pastors on the other extreme that think the bigger, the better, and we should grow at all cost. And if we're not growing, there's something wrong. And it's all about growth, and it's all about the numbers, and it's all about more and bigger and better, and it's growth at all costs. And I think both extremes are wrong. And what's odd is the place that I learned this quote, healthy things grow and growing things change, was not a place that was growing. And I was confused at why. Because they were teaching the right thing. And I was like, man, it's weird. It seems from the surface that there's health. They're saying the right things. But yet, as I was removed from that place and years later looking back, I'm like, I get it. They were focused on the wrong thing. They were focused on growth. Their attention was dominated by growth. How do we get more? How do we get more people? How do we get more money? How do we use people as a product and as a means to an end to just get more? It was more people, it was more this, it was more this, and they used and manipulated, and it was an unhealthy place that actually taught me this quote. I was like, no wonder they weren't growing. There was immorality under the surface that I didn't know about. There was abuse of people. There was manipulation of people. And I'm like, they were focused on the wrong thing. You see, our focus can't be on growth. Our focus has to be on health. And if we'll focus on being healthy, and if we'll focus on being healthy in our relationship with God, and if we'll be focused on being healthy in our relationship with one another, even Jesus said in John 15, don't focus on the growth, and don't focus on the fruit. Focus on abiding and trusting in me. And if you'll focus and put your attention and intentionality in the right place, the fruit will come. And if you'll trust God to prune away the unhealthy parts of your life, guess what? You'll produce more fruit. But don't get caught up in being focused on the growth. Don't be afraid of growth. Don't be afraid of God trusting you with more. But be focused on being a person that's healthy that can be trusted with more. Be a person that's healthy. Be a person that puts your focus in the right place. Be a person in a church that's healthy and focused there, and then growth will come. And then be aware that growth will come and prepare for it and anticipate it, and then be aware that growth will bring changes. And be aware of it and anticipate it and prepare for it. And there's a couple of extreme responses. There's people that are complacent and want to stay safe and want to maintain and don't want to take risk. And listen, following God sometimes requires you to take risk. Jesus walked up to the disciples and said, hey, I want you to take a risk, and I want you to leave everything that's comfortable, and I want you to follow me. And there were some people that were unwilling to take some risks that said, I can't risk that. That's too much, and they stayed safe, and they stayed comfortable. And then there were others that said, I'll risk everything, and I'll leave everything, and I'll follow you. And then there's others that to them, growth is God. And it's all about growth. And they are focused on growth. And they get gimmicky and they get manipulative and they lack character. And it's the end justifies the means, and they'll manipulate and they don't have character. And listen, I tell people all the time, how you succeed is more important than if you succeed. How you treat people, how you get there is as important. God cares about your character. God cares about the way you do it. God cares about the way you treat people. And as a church, our focus is not on the growth. Our focus is on health and being healthy in our team, in our relationship with God, is cultivating a family that's healthy in our relationships, and then being aware that that's probably going to create growth. And that's probably going to create change in our church. So we know that the mission of God is for us to multiply, to make more people that look and act like Jesus, to expand, to be willing to take some risks, to follow Jesus, to expand the good that God's doing here and have it reach out into our community. But our focus is on health, knowing that that will lead to growth, that will probably lead to change. And the last thing that he tells them is, I want you to subdue the earth. It's a strong word. There's debates on what that word could mean. But it simply means this: to harness potential. To walk into something in its raw form and to harness its potential and to bring the potential out of it. Notice this. Before humanity is created, God's creating stuff. And notice what he says after. This is good. Man, this is good. He creates some trees. This is good. And he creates some animals. This is good. He creates land and water. This is good. But then he creates humanity, partnership. And he blesses them, gives them capacity and ability to accomplish the mission, gives them mission, and then starts the journey of walking with them and says, I want you to multiply. I want you to expand. I want you to cultivate new ground. I want you to take the goodness I've given you and expand it. And then I want you to subdue it. I want you to be people that harness the potential of the creation I've given you. Notice how it turns a little bit after he begins to journey with them and walk with them. He looks at creation now and he says, man, this is not just good, this is very good. There's something about when you and I walk with God and we are led by the Spirit of God and we step into places that all of a sudden you and I, as we are led by the Spirit of God, we have eyes to see potential where others can't see it. And we are instructed and we have a relationship with God and a partnership with God to take things from their raw form and harness the potential out of it. We can step into a relationship with someone where others have discounted them and thrown them aside, but God sees something in them that no one else has seen. And as we develop a relationship with Him, we, in partnership with God, can harness the potential and bring good out of them and bring very good out of them. In places and spaces that have been overlooked, when good, godly people get involved, that God's gifted with creativity, you can walk into a space and bring something good out of it. Bring something very good out of it. Yesterday, about 20 of us got together and went over to the spring. And have you ever noticed that anything left to itself doesn't tend towards beauty and good? It normally kind of devolves into chaos and crazy. Like the flower beds that were left to themselves flowers weren't blooming and beauty wasn't happening. It was like grass and weeds and chaos and a mess. But when the church showed up and we went to work, when we got there, it was chaos. And when we left, it was beauty. And that's what's intended to happen when the church shows up in a place, is that we subdue, we harness the potential. You know, when some people drive out of their area and into West Tulsa, they don't see potential. They see something less than. You know what you and I should see when we pull into West Tulsa? God's blessing and God's favor and potential and what could be. When we drive through rough neighborhoods and rough places, man, we ought to see potential. And we ought to see God's favor. And we ought to see opportunity. And we ought to get excited about the opportunity that God, you've placed us here to bring the best out of this place, to bring the kingdom of God to this place. God, thank you for putting me here. God, thank you that you've given me a mission, that you've put our church here, that you've given us a mission to subdue, not to dominate, not to walk in, kick the door down and say, I'm here as the man of God. No. You know what we did yesterday? We walked there with a spirit of humility and humbleness and peace. And we put our gloves on and we grabbed our rakes and we served. And that's to be the church. To walk in with the character of God and the love of God and whatever place we're in, just to serve. And just to reflect God's love and God's goodness and God's character. And through relationship, get connected with people and to see potential. And just when opportunity presents itself, say, you know what? I see something in you. That's what I love about our church. I think it happens in this lobby every week. That just through conversations, there's conversations that happen and just, I see something in you. I see something in you. You know what? God sees something in you. You may not see it in yourself, but God sees something in you. And as you stay, there's something that happens to where we keep moving each other a little bit more towards Jesus, and we start harnessing the potential in each other, and we just start seeing something that maybe we used to think wasn't very good, and it starts to become maybe a little better, and it starts to become good, and it starts to get, and all of a sudden, good becomes, you look in the mirror and you say, man, I've been transformed into something that is very good. And this church existing in this community takes something that was good into very good. And we harness the potential, and we see something that, man, God does, and it's so cool to be a part of. What does this mean for us? I think it's something that we need to continue to do. I think it's something that we've done. Our focus as a church is, as you know, this isn't anything new. From the beginning has not to be gimmicky or draw a crowd. You've heard that. From the beginning, God said, don't draw a crowd, build a family. Don't draw a crowd. Don't get gimmicky. Don't do all these things. Don't just try to grow and get people in the building. Build a family. Build a family. Build a family. Be healthy. Be healthy. That's kind of what's driven us. And we've just done that. We've tried to be consistent. We've tried to be faithful and just build a family. You're hearing just kind of some of the nuts and bolts of how we've thought and how we think and how we're going to continue to think as a church. This is just kind of our mission, and we want to bring you in on that. And you're going to be hearing some of these things over the next few weeks, because the mission of God is just kind of how we think and how we function as a team, as a staff, as a church. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing something that's not perfect. We don't pretend to be perfect. We're not flawless. We got blemishes, and we're humble and trying to work those things out. But we're trying to focus on the right thing. Trying to focus on health and being humble. And I think we're continually seeing healthy, steady growth over this. And that growth is, we've kind of been aware that this was coming, that growth was coming, and anticipating it. So for a few years, we've just been talking about what happens when, and what do we do when, and when are the right times to pull different triggers and levers, and because we want to steward this thing well. We want to be faithful. We're not dominated by growth. We're not focused on growth. We're just saying, God, we want to take care of people. We want to pastor people well. We want to take care of our family well. We really value the family culture that we have here at West. And so we've been talking and planning, and we knew that at some point the family culture that we have here was going to require some expansion for our building. And so here in a few weeks, we're going to be unveiling some plans to expand the building here at West, because the building just has some limitations. Not so much in the auditorium. The auditorium has facilitated what we need from a weekend service capacity, but when we talk about just ministry and discipleship and the things that we do Monday through Friday, from groups and rooted and discipleship and student ministry and kids ministry and just family community ministry, serving our community, serving families in so many different capacities, we're limited in what we can do and how we can do it. So we're going to be rolling out plans just on how we can expand our building and how we can grow and better serve our family. We've been prayerful through this process. We believe in kind of this next step, this next season. It's a risk, but we're going to be rolling that out here in a couple of weeks with a lot of details. Just wanted to be up front and kind of fill you in on where we're going and what we're doing, and bring the family in on this conversation as we walk through this series. But here in 2, 3, 4 weeks, we'll kind of lay this out in full detail, give you a bunch of information. All 3 of our churches are stepping into seasons. We're going to be adding about 8,000 square feet to the building is the plan, moving out to the west. I call it the West Wing. It's pretty awesome. We're blowing some of the front space out to add more lobby space, because our family loves to be together and loves to talk and linger, and we just want more space for that to happen, for those conversations where people are seeing potential in each other to happen, and connections. And so we want to make room for that. Doubling our bathrooms on the other side, where there's not a crazy bottleneck over here, it's going to be beautiful. So we'll lay out plans and details and have space for you to ask questions. And then in a few weeks, we'll be launching a 2-year capital campaign. We'll be raising money to pay for all of that. And it's not going to be pressure or manipulation. We're just going to lay it out there and say, here's what we're doing, asking our family to be a part of that. Be prayerful. So we're asking you to pray about that. Pray with us, pray for us. And we're doing this just because, again, the health and the growth and the change. And the other thing that we're really praying about is because of some of the dynamics in our services and praying about the best way to do it, it looks like we're going to be needing to add a 4th service. So we're praying about the timing of that and want you to be aware of that. So good things to consider and exciting things, but we really want to protect the family culture of West and how we do that and be wise about this because we really value our church and the culture of our church. And so if you would just be praying with us and considering those things, and it's exciting. The future is exciting, and what God is doing is exciting. And so we value you and your prayers and your input. If you would stand with me, and we're gonna take a moment and just pray. And our prayer team will be here at the end if you need prayer over anything in your life. If you need a encouragement or healing, or need a closer relationship with Jesus, or you have questions about having a relationship with Jesus, our prayer team will be here. We got baptism coming in a couple of weeks. If you want to know more about that, you can ask the team. Let me speak a blessing over you as we prepare to go today. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and may God give you peace. We love you guys. We'll see you next week.